Today we're going to tie up a really nice Caddis Emerger pattern. Got myself a size 16 Klinkhamer hook in my vise. Usually I'll tie this a little bit smaller, maybe an 18. So we're going to go ahead and start about halfway down the parallel edge of this hook. That's going to be my marker for where I want the body, abdomen of this to stop. I'm going to carefully go around deep down into the bend, which is what a Klinkhamer hook will allow you to do. And that end's going to be dipping down in the water surface. So I'm going to get that started. We'll go ahead and cut off our excess. And then I'll just go ahead and continue on down. And you'll want to be really careful of that hook point. So you can see we're going really deep down here into the bend. And then I'm going to bring that thread back up. And we're going to tie in some LifeFlex material, and I'm going to use that for my ribbing. So this LifeFlex material is just really elasticy material. I'm using a copper color here. We're going to go ahead and tie this in right where we left off our thread. I want to make sure I get one good secure wrap around that. I'll take another couple of wraps, just kind of locking that down from the front. And just to make sure it's locked down, I'm going to go ahead and take a few wraps backwards before I start pulling on it, or it'll come right out of those thread wraps. So now that I've gone about that far down, I'm actually going to grab this a little bit tighter in my hand so I can pull that material fairly tight. That's going to help us keep a really narrow profile on it. We want our ribbing to be a little bit thinner on this. It's going to look pretty thick, but it's going to be a lot thicker if you're not stretching it. So we're just going to go ahead and tie this down right to where we ended up with our abdomen here. Continuing to pull on that material all the way down. Don't let up on it. And always keeping an eye on that thread that you're not going to hit that hook point. That's the fast track to having your thread break on you. In this case I'm using a black GSP, so it's going to be a little bit thicker, but it'll still fray apart. So we're going to take that down right deep into the bend, and then I can let up on the tension on that LifeFlex material. I'll take a couple of wraps up, and then we'll get ready to put some dubbing on the thread. For dubbing, I'm just going to use a nice light tan color dubbing. This happens to be UV Caddis Nymph dubbing, even though this is an emerger. That's fitting. It's kind of right in between an adult and a nymph. And dub that on fairly tightly. And then we're going to go ahead and slide it down just a little bit. I don't mind having a little bit of bare thread there. It'll allow me to travel back down to where I want our abdomen to start. So I'll make sure I get that first wrap down here around that LifeFlex that we tied in before. And we're just going to bring this right up the abdomen. It's okay to have a little bit of a taper on this. Usually a caddis is going to be tapered heavier in the back end of the abdomen than the front end, but we're not necessarily doing that here. We're going to go ahead and get this right up to where I want the abdomen to end, where I kind of marked it. Got a little bit of extra dubbing, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of pull that off of my thread. Twist that little remainder left. My thread's still hanging there. We're going to go ahead and grab our LifeFlex. Again, I'm going to pull this tight just so it leaves a little bit less material. It's still going to make a pretty heavy rib on here. I'm going to take open wraps, moving right up our abdomen. If you want, you can loosen that up a little bit as you go, and I'll just give you a little bit thicker wrap. And once I get right up to that tie-off point, I can pull it, take a couple of wraps over the top of it, pull it backwards, and we'll take a couple of wraps on the hook eye side of it. Let's go ahead and grab our scissors, pull this material kind of tight so it'll suck back down. And next we're going to put a wing on this, and we're just going to use some elk hair. I've clumped a pinched off a little clump of it, cut it off from the hide. You want to make sure this is cleaned out really well. So just kind of pull those fuzzies out. That will help the stack better. It'll also make it so when you tie it in, it's going to tie in a little bit tighter. You can use a comb, you can use your fingers, but you want to get that under fur out. We've got it all nice and cleaned out here. It's not even, so that's why we're going to put it in the stacker. So we're just going to grab our hair stacker and we're going to go ahead and just drop those hair fibers in. Give it some taps. Once you've got it stacked, you can see those tips are nice and lined up. Just going to pinch those so I don't lose that alignment. For measurement, I want this to be about to the bend of the hook here. I'm going to take that measurement, I'm going to transfer it into my other hand so it's right where I want to tie it off. Once I've got it there, usually I'll cut these butt ends off, but in this case I'm going to use those butt ends to help us create a little slope down to the eye of the hook. So I'm going to take a loose wrap around, another loose wrap around, and then I'm going to pull it straight up. You'll see that those fibers are going to start splaying upwards and outwards. This is where the GSP comes in handy because you can pull it fairly tight. Once you've got that done, I'm going to kind of pull back about a third of these. I'm going to take a wrap right over the top of that third and pull it tight. And I'm going to take the balance of it and pull it back. And we'll just transfer our thread in behind the eye. So we have a nice looking mess. From here we'll just go ahead and grab our scissors, and I'll grab about a third. It may take 2 or 3 cuts, but I'm going to kind of hold this hair, the butt ends here, down on an angle. Make a cut, turn my vise a little bit so I can grab hold of the next little clump. Do the same thing. I want to pull them forward. By pulling them forward when I make this cut, it's going to taper this a little bit. Then we've got a couple of stragglers here on this other side. We'll grab those. So once we have those cuts done, you can see that we've got a little bit of material, and that's what I wanted. I'll go ahead and just kind of pinch the wing. We'll start taking wraps through those fibers, the butt ends that we cut off. And I'm just going to make a nice little slope, trapping those butt ends down with some thread wraps here. Now before we dub the last bit of the fly, I've got myself a dark bark ginger hackle feather. We're going to hackle this fly right through the dubbing. I've sized this so it's about a size smaller than a 16 because it's going to be wrapped over kind of a bump of dubbing, so I don't want it excessively long. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this in right where I want that hackle to start. Just secure that nice and tight, moving up towards behind the eye of the hook. And just bend up this little bit of a stem. Turn my vise, and we'll just come on in and we'll clean that stem out. So we're just going to go back to that same dubbing we used for the abdomen. I'll dub that on nice and tight. We're going to start kind of about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. I'll just kind of tighten this as I work my way back. We want to have a pretty even pathway for our hackle to travel. So I'm going to make sure I get it coated all the way back to where that hackle fiber is. Then we're going to move forward again. Create a little bit more of a blocky area for this hackle to lie. You can go ahead and stroke some of those guard hairs that are kind of sticking out in the way. Just makes it look a little buggier. Nothing wrong with that. We'll go ahead and grab our hackle in our hackle pliers. Take one complete turn right around the base of that wing. And then we'll just take open wraps, moving up towards the eye of the hook here. See, our thread is traveling with us. It's getting shorter and shorter. It's okay, we'll just take a few wraps unwinding it. Keeping that tight grip on that hackle. Go ahead and take a turn or two more. From here I'll just go ahead and throw my thread right over the top of that hackle feather to secure it in place. I can pull it backwards a little bit, take a couple of wraps on the other side of it as well. Then I can release it from my hackle plier. We'll come in with our scissors, we'll find out right where that stem is coming through the thread, and we'll clip it off. From here we'll grab our whip finisher. Take a couple of turns behind the eye, and then we'll kind of move it backwards a little bit to build up a little bit of a head, trying not to trap fibers as we do this. Go ahead and release our thread. Make sure it's nice and secure. We'll grab our thread cutter. And there you go. A really nice Caddis Emerger pattern. Like I said, I'll tie this up a little bit smaller usually. The Klinkhamer hook works great. This back end is going to droop down in the water. That wing is going to give it buoyancy. This fly will hunt. So throw yourself a hook in the vise and give this one a shot.